nutritious foods on people's plates through a productive, prosperous agriculture and food sector, supporting nature and decent livelihoods, and inclusive of women and youth. That is the future that we want. We also know that in practice, this is a very tough job. And I'm honoured to be on the stage today with practitioners who are doing that job. Tackling barriers to the systemic, holistic change we know we need to see. Change that recognises and harnesses interconnections to reconfigure how our food systems work. These barriers to system change include linear thinking, disjointed knowledge, fragmented governance, isolated policies and actions, uncoordinated financing, and rigid procedures. We heard about some of these barriers in the opening session this morning, and today we're going to focus on fragmented governance as different levels of governance to lead and plan together. Synergies are missed, coherence is lost, and complex problems go unresolved. Neglecting power imbalances and the voices of affected groups perpetuates competing interests and inequalities. Many of us will have experienced this in practice. Now, if only he were here today. One of the founding fathers of the UN Food Systems Summit process, Dr. David Nabarro, who sadly passed away on Friday, would have had a clear message for us. Tackle these barriers by building bridges. Today, we will hear from practitioners who are working to build those bridges and finding enablers to breaking down those barriers. Thus, our session today will focus not only on barriers, but enablers for inclusive systems governance. So to start our conversation today, I would like to welcome onto the stage two ministers who have shown extraordinary commitment to breaking through barriers for food systems transformation in their context. Ministers, please do come and join me on this stage. I would like to start by introducing the Minister, Franklin Derek Wassey, Minister for Agriculture and Food Security of the Solomon Islands. And okay, thank you. Can you hear me yet?
One, two, testing. This works. Low.
Does this work okay now? Okay, thank you. I will introduce you again, Minister Franklin Derek Wassey, Minister for Agriculture and Food Security of the Solomon Islands, and Minister Henry Musapaka, Minister of Agriculture and Food Security in Sierra Leone. Thank you for your commitment and thank you for joining us today. Minister Wassey, let me start with you. Could you share with us the key barriers related to governance you have worked to overcome in the Solomon Islands to change your food system? Minister.
Hello. Hello. Thank you, moderator. In Solomon Islands, there are 5 government-related barriers to overcome in advancing agri-food system transformation. The first one is fragmented policy and institutional coordination. Siloed governance sectors, example in agriculture, trade, health, environment, leading to disjointed policies and missed opportunities for synergy. Lack of cross-sectoral governance mechanisms has hindered coherent food systems planning and implementation. 2, weak policy implementation capacity. While national policies exist, limited resources and institutional capacity at both national and provincial levels have made it difficult to translate them into tangible outcomes. Most agencies are overburdened, making it hard to take on additional responsibilities of traditional governance. Over 90% of inshore coastal areas are tribally owned. Structures is essential for inclusive and sustainable agri-food development. Thank you. And the fourth one is insufficient stakeholder collaboration. There has been a lack of inclusive and multidisciplinary collaboration among government, private sector, NGOs, and communities. And the fifth is data and monitoring gaps. Limited data systems for tracking food production, consumption, and nutrition outcomes have made evidence-based policy making a challenge. Strengthening monitoring and evaluation frameworks is key to guiding future investments and reforms. Thank you.
Thank you very much for setting out those barriers so clearly, ranging from data to the difference in the different ministries. Thank you very much for that. I'm sure some of that might resonate with you, Minister. So can I ask you the same question about what the key barriers related to governance you have worked to overcome and are facing in Sierra Leone? Please.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for the opportunity to represent what we're doing in Sierra Leone with regards to food systems. As my colleague has mentioned, some of these challenges are very similar. In Sierra Leone, I think for the longest time, agriculture or food system, well, let's start with agriculture, was seen as a political ministry, where it was through agriculture that you drove patronage, you gave things at the lowest level, you gave you divide everything by 15 because you just want to do it equally and please everybody. And what we have tried to do is to say, no, if you do that, you're not going to get the most bang for your buck. So in a strategy, the Feed Salon strategy, which is the country's food systems transformation strategy, we said we've identified agroecological hubs for different value chains where the local people in those areas, first of all, wants to do it, know how to do it. That's what they would like to do. And so in those instances, we say here in these agroecological zones, we are going to also make sure the limited resources that government has, that we tailor them to increase the density of infrastructure, whether it's roads, energy, water, irrigation. So that's really for us, that barrier of thinking this as this is just for everybody you distribute across and not really thinking productivity or impact or jobs or things like that. I think for us it's a barrier that we quickly had to break down by identifying these agroecologies for various value chains. I think, like my colleague, policy coherence is a major issue in food systems. I think you have to have, and it's a journey that we've just started and we're making that progress, where on the one hand, if a colleague minister they feel we work in silos, they say, oh, this is my own area and these are my own objectives that I must meet now, versus a broader goal or a food systems goal, then we're not going to be able to achieve work as one government, because oftentimes, especially when it comes to policy, you can want to protect, and actually it's not just the Minister of Trade, the vast majority of people want cheap imported rice or food to also come in. And then you have to figure out how we're going to make this work. and then and for us, what helps with addressing such issues, we have the Presidential Council for the Delivery of Feeds Alone that the President himself chairs, so that these policy coordination challenges, those trade-offs can actually be brought to the table and understood properly for decisions to be made. For the longest time also, as I said, we had ecologists, but also planning was independently done. A Minister of Development, Roads, Energy will make their plan, take it to the Ministry of Finance, they fund. But because we had those agroecological zones that we mapped out and academic roads, is it through our hubs? Is the power going to supply the processing that we want to do in these areas? That kind of engagement also sort of breaks down this barrier of planning in isolation. And now, for the President's flagship, Feeds Alone, we plan together and not planning in silos, which can often. So, in addition to all those that my colleague have mentioned, these are some of the, and by the way, I just came from another session, the 3FS session, which I really found very useful, because as we're planning, quickly I'm beginning to see isn't proposed there can be very useful with financial flows to food systems. We track it, and not just to agriculture, but to the whole system, to be able to drive that are very key and important for us.
Thanks so much. I mean, it's very impressive how you've identified very specific enablers to overcome those barriers, whether it's the agroecological zones, it's the joint planning process, or indeed the Presidential Council, which you've established to address some of those coordination issues. So thanks very much for sharing that with us. If I can go back to you, Minister Wasi, can you share with us a bit more about how the Solomon Islands is also introducing enablers through ensuring an inclusive and participatory approach to food systems transformation?
Thank you. So Solomon Islands, like you all know, is a least developed country. Seriously, through sustainable transformation of agri-food system, which promoting integrated governance, capacity building, and community-driven solutions. So the momentum is growing, but sustained transformation requires continued commitment across all levels of society throughout the 9 provinces of Solomon Islands. But the key activities in which the Ministry is spearheading in transforming the domestic agri-food system are strengthening policy and institutional framework. We've been engaged in capacity building for government agencies to develop and implement effective agri-food policies, and also in inclusive collaboration promoted through multidisciplinary stakeholder forums and dialogues, and also supporting the agriculture sector development policy reviews from time to time, like some key sectors like coconut, cocoa, poultry, and rice. We're also looking at enhancing sustainable community-based production, like boosting domestic crops and livestock production, including feasibility studies for local poultry and pig feed manufacturing. Support for community and school gardens, especially in the rural areas, to encourage local food consumption. Expansion of honey production with training on pesticides, on pest and disease management. And also one of the new ones that we are seriously addressing is promoting agribusiness and innovation by establishing agribusiness incubators. This is spearheaded by the Minister of Commerce, but working together, especially for youth and women. Agri-innovation competitions also have been organized to stimulate creative solutions and business ideas. Also development of value chain for key crops like taro, cassava, breadfruit, and green vegetables. And the last one that I would like to highlight is reducing food waste and loss. We've also engaged in training and infrastructure support for post-harvest handling, solar drying, and smart storage technologies. Last week we've just launched cassava pack house, and in one also promotion of climate smart agriculture, including agroforestry, with the indigenous trees together with the introduced ones, and mangrove restoration. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing, Minister. Thank you for showing, Minister, the impressive array of activities that you're undertaking in your country. Very interesting in here, particular to hear about the community-based solutions, the multidisciplinary approach, and the focus on key value chains and the inclusion of youth and women in those initiatives, indicating this more inclusive bottom-up approach, which you also indicated in your previous remarks, Minister, to Paco. But if I can come back to you, you mentioned Feeds Alone, which is, for those also for the work for the Solomon Islands. How did you ensure political buy-in across sectors and levels within government and across society to support the uptake of Feeds Alone?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think for us, the political buy-in came from the highest level. The president decided for his second term he was going to use food systems or agriculture to provide jobs for young people, address food insecurity, build the economy that way, and address matters of environmental concerns. In the first term, he used education as a tool, and he had done very well, and was known and championing around the globe some of the challenges. So when he decided he was going to do this the second term, it was then translating that into policy. So from the get-go, because of what he did in the first year, where for him, if he says this is my flagship, it's all of government that has to come on board. Our goal then, and my role as minister, was then to help that vision and to craft a strategy that also brought all of government to it as well. And so, as I mentioned, we chose selected value chains that will address those key areas that we cared about. Reducing imports, so our main key import crops, ones that help job creation for young people, ones that help export crops so that we bolster our currency and build the economy. And then there are critical trade-offs that often happen in government where, because my farmers say, oh, mangrove areas are very fertile, and so that's where we must grow our rice, but the Minister of Environment sits at the table, and when the President says he will create this Presidential Council that he himself chairs, and we meet regularly, and there's a secretariat with all the technical heads from ministries meet, that I'm a secretary to the secretariat, to the Presidential Council. We have these conversations about where should the money go. Should we be investing in these ecologies in these ways? Should we be making this investment in this type of road? So from that level, it really came from him. It was then from us to drive it. There's a last bit that is left, which is getting people. It should move really from all of governments to all of nations approach, because we want to bring private sector, we want to bring academia, we want to bring other people on board as well. And there too, we've been financial incentives for young people, for women, in specific areas to encourage them to be able to come. But political will at the highest level is needed. You have to get it from the president, and it's not once, it's consistently, where he will call the Minister of Finance to sit with me, the bank governor, all these people to say, this is what we're doing, this is my priority, let's make it work. It's for us to go make it work. That's his instructions, and we will come again and again at the table. And once you do that a few times, people know you're serious about this, and this is what you want. And for us, that's the story in Sierra Leone, and that's how we've been able to push and move as a system with the food.
Thank you very much indeed for sharing that really important story of change and the role that top-level commitment can make. Very, very striking indeed. Thank you. And so we've heard some really important points here around the barriers and enablers. The barriers of the challenges of the engagement between ministries, the barriers of policy incoherence, the barriers created by data. But we've heard most of all, in fact, about how these ministers and their governments and those they've been working with have really worked to create those enablers from the Presidential Council to the more bottom-up approaches that we heard from you. So I would really like to give these ministers a round of applause for their hard commitment and for their commitment and hard work. Thank you so much. It's been an honour to share a stage with you. I would like to ask you if you could retake your seats, and I would be delighted to invite the esteemed panel onto the stage, please. Please join us. Please do join us. So in our panel, following from the ministerial level perspective, we're going to be hearing and listening, indeed, to some more practitioners, 5 panelists, each of them who are working on a daily basis to contributing to make governance an enabler for food systems transformation. They will each share examples and practices from their own context, and I will introduce the panelists as they speak. But please do to join me on stage. Thank you. I would just like to add as well that we should have time at the end. If you have any comments, short comments from the floor, and we'll also be having a Mentimeter just to take comments which we can record as so we can report on the session. But for now, I'm delighted to start with you, Inaya. I'd like to start with Inaya Izzadeen, who is a member of Parliament, and in that role in the Republic of Lebanon, and in that role, chairperson of the Women and Children Parliamentary Committee and the SDG 2030 Parliamentary Commission. She's also the National Food Systems Convener for the Republic of Lebanon. Welcome, Inaya. Now, I'd like to ask you a question in the context of your roles as National Convener and a Member of Parliament. You really occupy a unique position bridging the legislative and executive spheres. We want to hear more about how you have used this dual role to address fragmentation and the power imbalance, which I know that you've experienced, to advance concrete legislative tools that support food systems transformation. We know you have done many things, and we would love to hear if you could share with us one concrete example of a key initiative that you've led in this regard. Over to you, Inaya.
Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Of course, as a Member of Parliament, National Convener, and as the head of the SDG Commission and Women and Children Committee, I think I have an exceptional intersectionality in my role that allows me to connect national policy, legal reform, and inclusive implementation. And Lebanon, faced with multiple complexities from economic to political to the war, we have now, from 2019 was let's do a mapping of our legislative framework and the policy framework. And we identified fragmented laws, outdated laws. We highlighted also legislative gaps. We did amendments. And this work led us to formulate and to propose the right a law on the right to food, which is a key enabler of the implementation of Lebanon national food system pathway. This law, which is now currently under parliamentary review, mirrors the inclusive and multi-stakeholder dialogue that shaped our national pathway and which is still going on. And it calls for the establishment of a national council, food council. Through the mandate of this council, it enables the institutionalization and the silo approach. and it ensures also participation of the different stakeholders, including women, youth, smallholder farmers, and also it translates the food system pathway into actionable legislative and policy priorities, and thus it helps us find the setup, the institutional setup to embed it and embed the pathway into different sectors: agriculture, economy, health, environment. This way, the food system pathway or the food system became a cross-sectoral, not only a cross-sectoral commitment, but rather also technical and political one. The proposed governance structure is built on clear roles, accountability, and justice, and it deals with the deep power imbalances that are present in Lebanon, especially in the rural areas. And we are currently trying to work with our all partners to create the right momentum around the adoption of this law. How did we translate this commitment? I can talk of so many initiatives, but let me mention two, and if we have time, we can detail. We have turned the crisis that we are going through, especially in the war-affected area in the south of Lebanon, into an opportunity by creating a sustainable emergency food system through a cash-for-work program targeting displaced women and youth. And it's rooted in the principles of resilient food system. It promotes decentralization, localism, by promoting local seed production, shortening of value chain, and it seeks to address local participation in local food production, integrate local food production with the external aid that they were receiving from the World Food Programme to improve diversity of the nutrition, and it promotes agroecological practices for resilience and sustainability, and it builds leadership and livelihood skills for long-term recovery. Of course, we have made capacity building, the appropriate technology given to these women and youth. Another initiative that deals with the power imbalance was the initiative on the work that we have done to eliminate or to stop the use of colistin antibiotic in the poultry sector because we noticed that we have a lot of antimicrobial resistance among human intensive care patients, and we know that colistin is a life-saving antibiotic for these patients, and the cause was through a lot of research, scientific research and evidence-based that was done in collaboration with the American University of Beirut. We found the resistant gene in the E. coli coming from the poultry that was abused by the poultry sector for growing up these the farms. It was contaminating soil, the water. It was present also systemically in some plants. So, and we ended up by convincing through relentless work to the Minister of Agriculture to issue a resolution to forbid the import, exchange, and use of antimicrobial.
Very much indeed, and tries to unify the existing fragmentation that you had, as well as more specific resolutions and laws in Union for Switzerland. Welcome, Ambassador Mona. Can you share with us how Switzerland is fostering policy coherence and cross-ministerial collaboration to overcome the barriers to food systems transformation?
Thank you very much, Corina, for the question. And let me maybe start with a small caveat. The title says, listening to practitioners, and I might be a little bit the odd guy on this panel. I'm not 100% a food system practitioner. I'm actually stepping in for my colleague from the Federal Office for Agriculture, unfortunately couldn't travel. But jokingly, I often also say ambassadors, the first thing they need to learn is to pretend to know what they're talking about, so let's give it a try. Indeed, building on our own experience in Switzerland when it comes to addressing the barriers to food systems transformation, which, by the way, have been very eloquently outlined by the ministers just now, policy coherence is not only an option, it is essential. It is, in fact, one of the most effective enablers to align some of the divergent interests that shape our food systems. Integrating policies across sectors of agriculture, health and nutrition, biodiversity, and climate change has proven critical to gain the necessary political support. Developing such well-balanced cross-sectoral and interministerial strategies has furthermore led to more effective policies and allowed us to better manage necessary trade-offs. Today, budget constraints are a reality that many of our countries are facing. This financial pressure makes it even more vital to collaborate across ministries, seeking synergies and ensuring that existing resources are used as efficiently as possible. In Switzerland, we are increasingly exploring how different sectoral budgets can be mobilized in support of food systems transformation, both nationally and internationally. Let me share one concrete example. Switzerland's climate strategy for agriculture and food 2050 serves as both a model for cross-sectoral collaboration and for leveraging budgetary complementarities. The strategy sets ambitious goals to reduce greenhouse emissions for agriculture by 40% compared to 1990 levels, to reduce the per capita food-related emissions footprint by 2/3 compared to 2020, and to maintain a minimum national food self-sufficiency rate of 50%. This strategy was developed jointly by 3 federal offices: the Federal Office for Agriculture, the Federal Office for Environment, and the Federal Office for Veterinary Affairs and Food Safety. These institutions, led by 3 different ministers, worked closely together to integrate diverse sectoral objectives. The strategy includes a broad range of measures, from promoting climate-friendly production methods and sustainable value chains, to reducing food waste, enhancing education, and encouraging healthier nutrition. Importantly, this interministerial collaboration allows us to draw upon 3 separate federal budgets, strengthening the financial foundation of our food system transformation efforts. Rather than creating new governance structures, we have chosen to work within existing frameworks. Cross-ministerial working groups meet regularly to share information and coordinate action. This approach has also proven effective by promoting resource efficiency, avoiding duplication, and fostering a genuinely collaborative mindset. Beyond our national borders, Switzerland is also committed to promoting policy coherence and interministerial coordination at the international level. In our role as co-lead of the One Planet's Network Sustainable Food Systems program, we recently co-organized the conference Overcoming the Barriers to Food Systems Transformation in partnership with the Coordination Hub, Brazil, and several other key actors. The outcome document of that conference includes concrete, actionable proposals and calls for, among others, greater coherence across all food system-related policies and stakeholders. This document is publicly available on the Coordinations Hub website, and we warmly invite all delegations to engage with its content and apply its recommendations in their respective context. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, and you certainly did a very good job there of your pretending. So thank you very much indeed. I think this point about budgets, which was raised, and the Minister from Sierra Leone indicated in it in the food systems, in the financial tool as well, but this point about how you then bring budgets around to support the coherence really is an incredibly important aspect. And also that the way that you've taken a different approach to governance through the cross-ministerial groups as opposed to setting up a new structure. I'm going to welcome now our third panelist, Milian Belay, coordinator at the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa and expert at the International Panel of Experts of Sustainable Food Systems. So you join us from civil society. Can you share with us, from your experience of practice, how governance can really enable transformative change in food systems, and share an example of how to create a really inclusive approach? We were talking the other day, and we know that the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa organised a Pan-African chefs gathering and policy convening together, and this seemed to be an interesting example of bringing together stakeholders in a more inclusive approach. Why is something like this important for inclusive governance? Over to you.
Thank you very much. The Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa is a movement of movements. We have farmers' movements, fisher folks, pastoralists, indigenous people, women, youth, consumer associations, faith-based institutions, and the bigger civil society. Our members work in 50 of the 55 African countries and close to 200 million people. Inclusive governance is not a luxury, as you know, but a foundation for genuine food system transformation, and those most affected are less heard, as we all know. And the food system transformation agenda is basically a justice agenda because the inequality in the system, the exploitation, the exclusion are the root cause of hunger, not scarcity. While the food system is controlled by few powerful actors, and while the voiceless are producing the majority of the food that we eat, and while they are not heard, we cannot have a genuine food system transformation. So I think the rights-based governance is very much essential because right to food is a basic human right, and most of us we have it in our constitution. So the human rights agenda is an agenda for the voiceless. So that's very much important. Even this UNFSS process should have a clear participatory structure. As we know, the civil society and indigenous peoples mechanism wanted dearly to participate, but they couldn't. They boycotted this because they felt that the structure is not representative very well. So call for shifting governance rooted in human rights is very much important. Participation to meaningful participation. I think one request is also the aligning global pathways to agreed civil society, CFS mechanism, Committee for Food Security and Nutrition mechanisms. So the policy coherence is important, and quite recently, AFSAR is doing quite a number of works to support the food system transformation, at least in our continent, in Africa, to bring the voiceless. One of the actors that we've never invited to the table to discuss about food system transformation are chefs, African chefs, chefs who are producing African food. So we brought them together. And they were very much happy because it's for the first time that they were recognized as a voice. And they participated. And they say that African food is important. African food, there is a narrative that there is no food in Africa, it's only poverty and disease and, all those negative colonial narratives are still dominating African food system. And it's at the lower in the food system echelon, So they're very much happy. They said it is spiritual, it's cultural, it's healthy, it's nutritional. So we have to promote African food. And most of the culinary schools in Africa do not teach African food. They only teach European food. So it's very much important that we recognize African food, and there was also commitment to African food. But much more importantly, there was a recognition that, by the way, we have here the parliamentarians and the parliamentarians and the journalists and Honorable Francois is represented here, and a number of them were represented. And it's a collective decision that the voice of farmers and the voice of the voiceless should be heard at spaces like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for that. Making key points there about rights-based governance, about hearing the voice, the voiceless, and bringing in perhaps unusual stakeholders and actors to bring in new ideas and new thoughts to advance this agenda. Thank you very much indeed. And now I'd like to move on now to a government that has had a very active engagement with civil society as government. Lilian dos Santos Wahal, Secretary of Food and Nutrition Security at the Ministry of Development and Social Assistance, Family and the Fight Against Hunger in Brazil. Lilian, Brazil is an excellent example when it comes to the strong role of its civil society in shaping agri-food policies. From the extensive experience that you've had, how is civil society engagement helping to build decentralized and inclusive food governance systems in Brazil? Over to you.
Thank you, Corina. And first, I'd like to thank you for the kind invitation to join this high-level panel. And first, before beginning, I just want to say that FAO you and your team, you have just launched today a study about Alimenta Cidades. That is the case that I will talk a little bit about it. And so if we can share with everybody after, it will be very nice. But it's an honor for me to share Brazil's perspective and our efforts to advance inclusive food systems governance, and bring this experience of Alimenta Cidades strategy that in English it would be feeding cities, something like feeding cities strategy. We launched this strategy in 2023, aiming to expand the production, access and consumption of adequate and healthy food in Brazilian cities, especially in urban peripheries and among vulnerable populations. Today in Brazil, we have about 85% of our population in cities, urban population. More than 25 million people live in large cities, marked by food deserts and food swamps. In the 91 cities mapped by the strategy, we are working with 91 cities now in Brazil at Alimenta Cidades strategy. We have 5.4 million people facing extreme challenges in accessing adequate food. And we also have 15 million living in areas where ultra-processed products dominate, while fresh and healthy options remain scarce and unaffordable. This reality highlights for us the urgency of transforming urban food systems, and Alimenta Cidades is Brazil's coordinated response, working with local governments, municipalities, and 60 cities, the 60 biggest cities of the country, supporting a range of actions including reduction and others, like improving local school feeding, etc. One of the most important innovations are the Solidarity Kitchens, co-developed with civil society. These are more than emergency food aid. They are a space of food justice and territorial resilience. Now, in the second phase of this strategy, we are expanding to reach the 91 municipalities, and that's the place that we are now, exactly now. And we are reaching over 77 million people that live in these cities. To achieve the goal of universal access to healthy food while addressing social and territorial inequalities, inclusive governance is essential, with active participation from civil society, and we consider this a lot. Alimenta Cidades is anchored in our Brazil's National Food and Nutrition Security System that we call CISAM. And this system integrates all levels of government and civil society to uphold the human right to adequate food. In addition to the councils, and when I say councils, we are talking about National Council, State Council, and local councils of food and nutrition security. And in addition to these councils that bring together civil society and government sectors, a key pillar of our CISA, the system of Brazilian system of food and nutrition security. A key pillar of this system is it's difficult in English. Sorry. Intersectoriality. So a key pillar of our system is intersectorial in general, embodied in governance chambers that bring together 25, in the case of federal government, bring together 24 ministries at the federal level. This offers a space to align priorities and foster dialogue across sectors. One of the strategy's strengths is its ability to translate complex food systems goals into local action. With federal support, the local governors or municipalities are developing diagnosis and implementation routes for the period 2024 to 2026. We have technical assistance of some organizations, and one of them is here now, that is Comida do Amanhã, Food for Tomorrow. That is a civil society organization from Brazil. And in this work with the local government, governors and civil society, we are calling the attention to the importance of thinking about food systems in urban context, bringing together civil society and governors in general, promoting participation of the civil society. This reflects decades of collective effort in Brazil to embed equity, sustainability, and the right to food into public policy. Scalable strategies like Alimenta Cidades link nutrition, climate, and social justice, and they can be possible through intersectoral planning and active social participation. Corina, we also have here some colleagues from Brazil, from the Ministry of Agrarian Development that are working together with us in this strategy and in all our implementation of the strategies of food system in general, so it's good for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for outlining the comprehensive approach that you're taking to engaging with civil society and others in the urban context. It's really interesting to hear the very different contexts from which our different panelists come, and yet some of the similarities that are coming out in this case, the power of inclusion of communities with the bottom-up approach, which we also heard about from the Solomon Islands, from Milian, and from others. So thanks very much for sharing that with us. Now I'd like to move on to our final panelist, Namakolo Kovic. She is the International Livestock Research Institute Director General's representative to Ethiopia, the CJR Ethiopia country convener, and the CJR Interim Deputy Director for Better Diets and Nutrition Science Programme. And now, Namakolo, we've talked about different aspects of being more integrated and inclusive as enablers of transformation. You've been part of something called the Food Systems Countdown to 2030 expert group. So let's move to the role of data. Can you share with us, Namakolo, your experience of bringing in data as an enabler of more inclusion and coherence for food systems transformation? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Corina. Thank you to the other panelists. So the Food Systems Countdown to 2030 initiative came into being during the 2021 process, on the realization that countries were responding and beginning to develop their food systems transformation pathways, but that there would be need to monitor that progress. And for that to happen, then there would be need for an effort to identify the right indicators, but a suite of indicators that allow you to monitor holistic transformation. Because with food systems transformation, there are so many domains. You can focus in one area and look like you are making progress. And if you are not paying attention, you will have trade-offs elsewhere. I think Dr. Anaya, when she spoke, she talked about the use of antibiotics and antimicrobial resistance. That is a trade-off because the productivity may have increased, but then you end up with antimicrobial resistance. So it is important when we monitor food systems transformation that we include enough domains to be able to see when there are trade-offs actually taking place. And so the initiative has got 5 key domains under which there are indicators that were identified. The first one is diets, nutrition and health, and here we have indicators addressing diet quality, food safety, and food environments. The second one is on environment and climate, and here we address indicators on land use, practices, pollution, and the need for climate smart solutions and production practices. The third is on livelihood, poverty, and equity, really to make sure that we have indicators in there that can represent and be able to track whether the livelihoods that we bring on board as part of food systems transformation can meaningfully lead to poverty alleviation amongst those that are engaged in the sector, and also elements of equity. Then there's the issue of governance, which is the 4th area domain, and here we address the issue of the need for a common vision, but also looking at, is that common vision actually making people align to be able to move in a coherent direction. And here we also look at indicators on effective implementation and accountability. And then the 5th one is on resilience and sustainability, and looking at issues around exposure to shocks and resilience capacities, recognizing that not everybody will be equally endowed within food systems transformation, and there will be need to have some indicators to monitor when there is need to address issues of exposure to shocks, that this is actually the case. So we ended up with a suite of 50 indicators, and for those indicators to be used, we had to have data in at least 70 countries, which is quite a lot. And it can limit the type of indicators that then you have. There has been reports that you can look up on the Food Systems Countdown to 2030 website. Looking at level is not enough. The activities that would result in that progress are happening at country level. So it is extremely important to make sure that is actually done at country level. And so using Ethiopia as an example, we then took those 50 indicators in Ethiopia and looked at the Ethiopia Food Systems Transformation pathway. And there, I'm sure you have heard about the 7 clusters already. So what we looked at those indicators in terms of usefulness against those 7 clusters, and then added additional indicators to make sure that we can monitor progress within the Ethiopian context. But beyond that, working with the Ministry of Agriculture, we were told they are reporting not only on this now food systems process, but they still have to report to the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program through the CADP biannual review process. They have to report on SDGs. They have to report on nationally determined contributions. And so the ministry asked us to end up with to work towards a single list of indicators that can be used by the National Statistical Services, so that routine data collection on a regular basis would make data available, so that when it is time to track and look at the 7 clusters, it would be possible when it's time to report to the CADEP biannual review process, the data would be available. And when it's time, I'm almost done. When it's time to report to the nationally determined contributions, the data again would be available. And all this is informed by the common vision to be able to monitor towards that. Thank you, Corinna.
Thank you, Namakolo, for really highlighting the importance of systems knowledge and bringing that the data piece as an essential component. We have the systems knowledge part, you have to have the budgets, you have to have the policy right, you have to have the governance right, and of course you have to have the systems thinking piece to enable people to see all of those different interconnections. So thanks very much for that. But I would like to spend half of those 12 minutes just going over to you to the floor. I'll just take 3 comments for maximum for 3 minutes. Panelists, please do stay on stage. Unfortunately, we won't be able to have any interaction, but we will with the panelists, regrettably. But what we will ask you to do is that we have set up a Mentimeter. Should you have any comments on reflections on what is quite an extraordinary range of different perspectives, but with very common themes about governance as an enabler barrier coming out. So if you do have comments to make, we will take them home with us and introduce them into the report that we will be making on this session. You can see on the screen behind me instructions on how to access that Mentimeter. So please do, if you do have comments to make, please do make them, and we can take them home with us. And I would like to ask if there were any very short comments from the floor. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you. I will take the one here, please, if you could be very brief. Thank you very much. And please say who you are and your affiliation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Sophie Niklaus from INRAE, representing the National Institute of Research for Agriculture, Food and the Environment. So thank you very much, FAO, for organizing this important session on how to draw a systemic vision towards food system transformation to address barriers and put forward enablers. And thank you to all panelists for the wonderful examples you provided around very important topics. I can only concur to the observation that actors need to be to converge in their efforts towards common goals, which is very difficult, in fact, whenever multiple stakeholders are involved and working together, because they don't always have common goals. And whatever the level of discussion, in particular talking about food system transformation, we're talking about common goods, water, soil, health, and public health, and also a livable planet. So it's really hard to draw governance around this, and I wish we can all build on the wonderful examples you showed, in particular in Brazil, for instance, really building on the importance of nutrition. I just want to put forward a policy brief that we wrote to highlight the importance of nutrition in food system transformation. Happy to share this with any of you, and in particular, we put forward research priorities for really inclusive transformation and making sure also that governance is covered. So we certainly need more political science in this discussion to make sure that we make progress towards inclusive governance. Thank you very much for taking this comment.
Thank you very much indeed, and for your appreciation for indeed the wonderful examples that have been shared today. I will take a couple more comments. There was someone else with please, the gentleman over here, and please do say your name and affiliation.
Thank you very much for the discussion so far. I just want to highlight maybe 2 important points as we talk about food system transformation from an inclusive perspective. The first thing is to include the voices that matter. A lot of our discussions throughout have been centered on policy, and that hangs quite a lot on us as designers, program, conceptual, the people that conceptualize the programs and the like. But how much of this is actually inculcating the views that are actually coming from the people that are feeling the pinch with regards to dysfunctional food systems. And I speak about communities that are daily struggling to access food. They are actually, having disruptions in terms of, getting the incomes that they will need to access the food wherever they can manage to do that, and the quality of the kind of food that should be available to them. How much of the conversation is actually taking place? And this speaks a lot to governance. How much of local level governance within the food system transformation agenda is actually integrated in our policy frameworks and development strategies that we put up across. The final point I want to make is about capacitating actors in the food system space. Food system is quite a challenging context with regards to all these trends that are going on. We have AI that's now navigating the space. We talk about climate, negative climatic feedback. How much of capacities are we generating to support actors in the food systems arena to meet these challenges with a lot of resilience and sustaining the momentum that is supposed to be gained as we are really navigating the terrain in the food system space? This requires very thoughtful and context-specific kind of strategizing with regards to augmenting food system transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very good points made from the floor there. Thank you. I will take one more.
I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Andrew Jamali. I'm coming from the National Planning Commission of Malawi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentleman from Malawi. I would now like to go to the gentleman over here for your comment, please. And please introduce yourself. Yes, from Bhutan. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Am I audible? Yes. Thank you. I am one of the participants and representing Minister for Royal Government of Bhutan. So I'll just take a quick look at this particular agenda and make our Bhutan's position, where we stand and how we progress. So on that note, Bhutan food transformation journey is also being aligned with the shared visions deeply rooted in our national values. And some of the barriers which I would just like to mention is, despite the structural changes and rugged terrain and climate vulnerabilities, the limited economy scale, the turning point for Bhutan is the inclusive government mechanism anchored in our holistic development philosophy of gross national happiness. And some of the enablers are like after the food system transformation pathways of 2021, we have some of the enabling policy, food and nutrition security policy 2023, agri-food sector strategy 2034, which are one of the pillars to implement food system transformations. And there is also an enabling multi-sectoral coordination platform and empowering local government at the root of the planning process, and investing in youth and women-led enterprises where diverse culture, rich biodiversity, pristine nature are some of the indicators incorporated in the mindful urbanization development philosophy, leveraging ecological integrity to increase economic inclusion. So for that, let me declare here to the August gathering that Bhutan has already committed to host the first ever Conscious Food Summit Alliance supported by UNDP in 2026 in Bhutan, where all the development partners are cordially invited, where Bhutan will position itself on the food system transformation. And these are some of the enablers which really is helping us to transform our food system transformation. And the concluding remark which I'd like to make it that to sustain this momentum, international development partners should play a vital role, not only in mobilizing resources, but also supporting institutional capacity, fostering South-South cooperation, and aligning global commitment with local aspirations. And nonetheless, their continuous partnership will be critical in enabling Bhutan to fully realize its vision of food sovereignty and self-reliance while contributing to our global food system and Galliful Mindfulness City initiative.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for those comments from France and Malawi and Bhutan. And I have a feeling that if we had more time, we would be hearing some equally interesting and relevant experiences, since there are so many out there, but regrettably we will not be able to share. But the good news is that you are able to put your comments into the Mentimeter, so we're able to integrate them into the report of this session. So please do go ahead and do that to make sure that we've really heard from those valuable experiences in the room. We've heard some very powerful stories of change this afternoon, very powerful stories of change. And if I can sum up very briefly before moving for our brief closing remarks, we've heard mainly about enablers, because the people who are sitting next to me here and the ministers we heard earlier are bridge builders. They are the ones who are working
day in and day out to make these changes happen. And that takes a certain person, a certain strength and courage. And I would really like to thank the panelists and the ministers for the courage that they have shown in their work. Thank you. But what we've heard about are governance structures that are shifting. We've heard about governance structures that are shifting in order to enable greater bridge building between ministries and sectors and stakeholders. We've heard about policies which are being formulated as one policies to bring these different fragmented parts together. We've heard the words justice a lot. Justice, inclusion, and making sure that we achieve the right to food by including the voices, as the gentleman put it, that matter. Co-designing with communities, bottom-up approaches from value chains to solidarity, kitchens, including women, youth, civil society, smallholders. And thirdly, we've heard about joint planning, joint data, joint budgeting, that these joint issues are so critical, and coming together to do things jointly behind a clear shared vision. That came across also very clearly today. And of course that takes trust. It takes the building of relationships. It takes patience. And that is something that perhaps we talk about less, but is really the fabric of change. So thanks very much to our wonderful panelists that we've heard from today. And we will be sharing the key messages and the final report of this stocktake. So I would now like to invite Ahuna Eze Akonwa, UN Assistant Secretary General and UNDP Assistant Administrator and Regional Bureau for Africa Director, for closing remarks. I'm sorry not to give you so much time, but please do come up. We have been asked to close as timely as possible, but please welcome and thank you very much. Please do come up. No, we can just stay here, it's fine.
Thank you, Karina, and Excellencies, colleagues, friends, but above all, the practitioners and change makers that we've heard from today. Thank you for the opportunity to wrap this up. Karina, I think you summarized it quite well, so I don't have to go over what we heard. We've, I think, experienced a rich, grounded, diverse, and thought-provoking discussion. What we've seen in this session is that food systems transforming is not just possible, it is actually already happening, especially when we crowd in governance as inclusive and also systemic barriers that are actively addressed. I think let me just offer 3 reflections from a development perspective. First is that governance is not only about who is at the table, but how the table is built. Power must be redistributed, institutions transformed, and inclusive decisions made intentionally. As we just heard from the floor, we need to bring the voices of communities at the local level to influence policy directions. Second is the fact that development is actually at the heart of this transformation. It's beyond the technical treatment of food. That we have to look at it from a perspective of presence, proximity, and programming. And from this perspective, we as UNDP consider that we cannot approach this summit and its stock-taking sessions from the sidelines, because UNDP has a presence in 170 countries. We work at that intersection of policy, governance, and finance to support countries realign food, climate, and biodiversity priorities. And that's specifically, I think, just highlighting a few aspects of this. The Food and Power Initiative, for instance, which we have launched. We are supporting countries navigate the political economy dynamics that hinder equitable transformation. And you just heard from the representative from Bhutan. Through the Conscious Food Systems Alliance, we cultivate food systems leadership and transformation from the inside out, literally. Now preparing, of course, for this first Global Conscious Food Systems Summit in Bhutan in 2026. It could be argued that food is not just about our physical anatomy. It is cultural. Some would consider it spiritual. It's about our overall well-being. You've heard that saying that man shall not live by bread alone. More concretely, we are supporting 13 countries align their national biodiversity strategies and action plans with their food and agricultural policies. In Jordan and Kenya, for instance, we work with government and local communities of smallholder farmers to help build more resilient food systems through innovative finance solutions and community-based food processing. In Indonesia, we supported the establishment of a national action plan on sustainable palm oil, bringing together 17 ministries and more than 245 organizations to catalyze 8 land use policy reforms. In Rwanda and Ecuador, we are supporting the establishment of multi-stakeholder platforms and prepare for EU deforestation regulations. And here in Ethiopia, we're supporting agricultural insurance and tailored financial products for smallholder farmers. Together with the Ethiopian government, the Ethiopia and Coffee and Tea Authority, we are advancing traceable, sustainable coffee systems. And we don't do this alone. You've seen the impact of our RBAs here, the Rome-based agencies. UNDP co-leads together also with WHO and UN Food Systems Task Force, working with FAO, IFAD, UNEP, and many others to support national pathways across the globe. And we complement, collaborate, and connect, because no single actor can drive this agenda alone. And we want to offer to harness all the best practices and good models that are coming out of these stock-taking exercises to create a platform for South-South cooperation and learning exchanges. And we hope that we can work together on this. Third and last is that this summit and this session reinforces what is at stake: our planet, our biodiversity, our livelihoods. What we consume, how we grow it, and who decides will shape our common humanity. The food systems process, for me, can feed and water and also nourish a very perched multilateral landscape right now. So this summit is bigger than food. It is about restoring the core values of our common humanity. It's about regaining ground on global solidarity. And I hope that we all go out of here believing that we are part of something truly generational. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with those excellent closing remarks, I bring this session to a close. I'd like to thank the two ministers and our panelists, and indeed you for participating today. And I hope that what you'll be taking home with you is indeed the many actions that are being taken and the lessons that can be learned by listening to practitioners. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.